kissed a boy and I liked it. At least one of them did. The other one looked a little confused, but he might have liked that thing too. I guess we're going to have to find out on the next episode of White Lotus. But let's not worry about the next episode. Let's talk about this one. Because you want to be a what now? Let's get into it. This is the full moon party. There was a lot that took place. There were a lot of parallels between the different characters' experiences, and we'll get into that. The theme for this episode, I would say, is sharing/oversharing. So we start off with Gaytuk, and he's freaking out about the gun going missing. And the whole time he was looking, I was like, look at the cameras, look at the cameras, look at the cameras. And then he finally did. And he saw Tim walking out of that guardhouse. And when I tell you my man was hot, I ain't never seen his face on Gaytuk. Not gonna hold you. I liked it a little bit. It showed he had a little fire in him. He was so mad that thing replayed 4-5 times. So he gets up and goes looking for Tim. And he finds him. Pretty fast, actually. But he saw that he was at the table with Victoria and Piper. And Piper was like, I'm about to share some news with y'all. Don't be upset. And Piper was like, so boom. After graduation, I'm going to live in Thailand for like at least a year. And I'm going to meditate. That's about it. I'm going to develop my spirituality. And I'm going to grow in Buddhism. And Victoria was like, hold up now. But you're not Buddhist. And Piper was like, yes, I am. And the ignorance that was just emanating from Victoria was crazy because she was like, but you're not from China. And I was like, now, Victoria, we're going to have to sit you down and talk to you about history, sis, because this ain't it. And I understood what Victoria was trying to say. She was like, hey, you were raised in America under Christian values. So coming to a place where English is not the first language, even though almost everybody around the world learns English. So Piper would have been fine with that, though. But that would have been a foreign space to her. Now, at the table, Victoria and Piper are going back and forth, and Tim is absolutely white. But he said, I thought we were here for your thesis. And Piper was like, there is no thesis. And then they were just really shook after that. Now, that lie was a problem because your parents care about you enough to come over there, like bring the whole family, and you decided to lie to them. That is a problem. You should have been upfront about that. And the situation was just funny to me because Victoria just kept getting loud. And when she yelled, you want to live in Taiwan? I said, baby, geography class was missed on you. So you just gonna merge all these Asian countries together. Meanwhile, Gaytuk is staring down Tim from afar. And he can't really approach because he's at the table with his family. And it looks like a heated discussion. And Fabian walks up on him and is like, is everything okay? Something wrong? And of course, Gaytuk lied and said, I want to see Mook. But that does track. And he was like, oh, okay, so just a little bit. Don't stay here too long because if you're not at the booth, who is at the booth? So then we bounce over to the yacht and Saxon and Lachlan, they're on the boat. They're going to the full moon party with Chloe and Chelsea, but they're separate. And Saxon is trying to pump up Lachlan, talking about, hey, you need to go all the way with Chloe. Really any woman for that matter, but, given the present company. And then Chelsea and Chloe are in a separate space. And Chloe is like, oh my gosh, I love that little magician. I love these young men because of their innocence. I don't even think she knows he's like 17 years old. Probably doesn't even care. And the age of consent is different in different regions of the world. And she was like, honestly, I just want some attention. Gary Gregg used to want it all the time, 3 times a day. And now he won't even touch me. He pretty much a monk. And Chelsea was like, I could never cheat on Rick because I love that man. I'm a romantic. And then Saxon was talking to Lachlan. He was like, Chloe wants you for the magic, bruh. And he said, I will take Chelsea because she's rude to me and it kind of turns me on. We probably need to unpack that thought process, but he said he likes a challenge, so we're going to keep it moving. I personally think she didn't like him because of how he acted on the boat in episode 1. Because he was acting like Scrooge McDouche on that boat when he was talking to Rick about the smoking. And she probably held on to it because, she don't play about Rick. And Saxon was really trying to coach up Lachlan. He was like, you only have one life to live and you got to make the most of it. And Lachlan was like, well, what if this life is one big test to see if we can become better people? And Saxon was like, no, what are you talking about? Lock in, Lachlan. But I feel like he's going to regret some of this advice he gave Lachlan toward the end of this episode. And then back at the Chelsea and Chloe conversation, Chelsea was like, I think something bad is about to happen. Rick is a hothead and I'm usually there to calm him down. He's like my child. And Chloe said one of the most church things she could have said in that moment. She was like, you can't babysit a 50-year-old man, girl. She was pretty much like, you can't raise a man. He's already grown. What you gonna do? And let the church say amen. So the next thing we see is Sister Act 3 over at the club with the Russians. So the Russians were pretty cool for the most part, but this is where I said the oversharing was happening because Brother Vlad was just giving up all the information. I mean, it was really funny though, because he was like, my parents are dead. My sister is a bitch. And Sister Mary Kate was like, oh no. And he was like, that's why I love my friends. And then Alexi and Valentine talked about how they met in dance class, and then Lori and Jacqueline said they did too. And so they said, should we dance since we already know how to dance except for them other two? And they did dance. And they got on that floor, they were sweaty and sexy. And Jacqueline was watching the other women that were staring at her while she was getting all this attention from men. And for her, she's not getting the attention from her husband. So what she's looking for is the validation from strangers. So she's like, I'm still young. I'm still sexy. The men want me. The women are still staring at me because they probably want to be me. You could tell she was absolutely living for that moment. So while Belinda was walking through the lobby, Fabian caught up with her and was like, hey, one of our regular guests is asking about you. You must have caught his eye or something like that. He already has a girlfriend that is beautiful and he has money and all this other kind of stuff, but he's very interested in you. And she was like, well, who is it? Now she knew it was Gary Gregg, but why is he asking about you? Didn't he just say his name wasn't Greg? So of course she was shook because she was thinking about the interaction she just had with him where he lied. And then she was also thinking about the fact that she had all that information about him in that Tanya situation. And then Fabian was like, I'll put you in touch. And I'm thinking, Fabian, for what? Are you running a brothel? Why does he need to see her? What kind of access are y'all giving to the guest? So then we get back to dinner, and Gay Talk is trying to pretend like he's watching Mook dance. I mean, he wants to see her, but he is really focused on Tim. But Piper and Victoria are going back and forth at that table. So then Piper was like, I'm trying to find my purpose and not be like Saxon who signed to follow this BS. I mean, you getting Victoria hotter and hotter at that table. Meanwhile, Gay Talk is over there just staring them down. And I'm like, Gay Talk, if you don't just go over to the table and tap that man on the shoulder and say, hey, sir, may we speak with you in private? You have a phone call, live, do whatever you got to do to get him away from the table and say, hey, man, give me back my gun. That whole situation with Gay Talk pissed me off. I need you to grow a pair. Them stones got to drop, fam, because you over there acting timid might get everybody killed. Speaking of somebody who did grow a pair, Belinda showed back up to that desk and talked to Fabian and was like, hey, this is the situation with Gary Gregg. First of all, his name is not Gary, it's Greg. And he changed it because he's possibly connected to the murder of his ex-wife Tanya in Italy. And on top of that, them people looking for him. So they want him for questioning. And she was like, I'm nervous about the fact that he was asking about me because he literally lied to my face. And then she was like, I mean, he killed his wife. Not you trying to whisper and talk to your teeth, girl. And she was like, I think we should call the police. The Thai police, the American police, or the Italian police. Actually, I think we should call all of the police. And Fabian shut that down. He was like, so we're not going to do that. You may be mistaken. So stop gossiping, girl. I don't think you have anything to worry about. I didn't sense any ill intentions, and I think you'll survive. Spoken like a true harborer of fugitives, or maybe even a fugitive himself. We don't know his story or where he came from. They are in Thailand, and I'm guessing he knows that a lot of his clientele is probably on the criminal side of things. And he's like, if I got to turn in Greg, that means I got to turn in everybody else, including maybe myself. So that was a dead end for Belinda. So then we brought back over to that table where Victoria kept tussling with Piper over her decision, talking about your whole set of values can change within a year. And Piper was like, well, that's kind of the plan. And I know Piper said she didn't want to ruffle no feathers, but girl, you already done plucked your mama to death. You might as well put her in the oven on 450. And then Victoria tried to get Tim to back her up on that, and that man was almost about to malfunction, so he couldn't even speak. He just got up and went to the bathroom. And Victoria was like, he's in shock. We're both in shock. And I was like, Victoria, if only you knew. And this is the time where I was like, Gay Tuck, this is your moment. If there was ever a time to say something, this would have been the moment. Literally, he went in the bathroom behind Tim and said, hey, I can't find something. I think you have it. And Tim was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And walked off. And Gaytuk just let him go. Now see, Gaytuk, I've been on your side for a minute. Pretty much the whole season. I was rooting for you. But this is an example of why Mook is playing in your face. How you gonna make this mean face in the booth and then lose all of that when you get to the bathroom to ask the man about the firearm? Literally, you could have told him, I got you on camera, man. Just give it back. So then Chloe, Lachlan, Chelsea, and Saxon are walking down the beach. And Lachlan was talking to Chloe and he was like, what happens at these parties? And she was like, everybody gets laid. And we should honor those traditions, right? And Saxon hears that Rick is in Bangkok dealing with a personal issue. And Saxon told Chelsea, well, there are no old guys here with issues. And Chelsea was like, now don't lie like that. We know you got some issues. Let's just focus on you not being weird tonight. So we done finally left dinner, and Victoria and Piper are going back and forth at that Ratliff Villa. And Victoria was like, well, what if it's a cult, Piper? She was like, we got to see this place before you go. And then Piper said something kind of young and naive, because she was like, I doubt it's a cult because the head monk wrote all these books. Now, that's the first time I looked at Piper kind of sideways because I'm like, girl, you might not be able to stay over there without supervision because that statement you just made gives me pause about your understanding of the world. And Victoria was like, everybody wrote a book. Charles Manson wrote a book. Bill Clinton wrote a book. Hell, Hillary wrote 5 of them joints. Victoria, what you got against the Clintons, girl? Like, that was hilarious. Her character is actually one of the funniest in the show. And she was like, we're going to have to check that thing out first thing in the morning. Your father's going to go have a nice chat with him, too. Ain't that right, Tim? And at this point with Tim, it's like, doo-doo-doo. We're sorry. Tim is not available right now. He got a whole bunch of other stuff he's processing. Honestly, he can't take anything else. If he goes back to the States, he going to have to take a charge. He already took Gatuk's gun. There's nothing left for him to take except for to be continued on that. And Victoria was like, I still don't have my lorazepam, so I'm going to have to drink myself to sleep. She just had to leave in such a dramatic fashion. And then after she left, Piper just started talking to Tim and was like, it's not like y'all raised us to be big Christians. And Tim was so stressed, he went down memory lane talking about the good old days. He was like, I used to be an altar boy back in the day. And I used to sing for Christmas. Now, I don't listen to too much Christmas music, but if you're going to hit me with a classic. I was hoping he was going to be like, Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm. But he didn't do that, though. He sang some other song that I did not know. And Piper was like, oh, so he just not going to talk to me. He just going to start singing a song. She left mid-song and just went to bed. So we back over at the full moon party and Saxon tells Lachlan to lock in. And don't get messy because you got to be ready to pounce when the time is right. And then Lachlan said something peculiar. He said, one day, I'm going to take you down. So this can be taken different ways. Now, I know he wasn't talking WrestleMania, and maybe he was saying, I'm going to beat you at your game one day. But what I thought he was trying to communicate is the Chris Brown take you down. You know the one. Can I take you down? I really want to take you down. And we'll get back to that for the record. And then Chloe comes back with drugs in hand, and Saxon is totally against it, but Lachlan was ready to party. So he popped that thing in real quick. Didn't even know what it was. And while they were over there doing that, Chelsea was trying to make a call to Rick just to check on him and see how he was doing, but he was just sitting down at the table to meet his friend Rick. So he ignored the call, but he probably should have answered it, put her on speaker, and then just muted her call because she needed to hear that conversation because that chat was something else. So apparently Frank had been sober for about 10 months because when it was time to order drinks, instead of ordering alcohol, he ordered chamomile tea. And Rick picked up on that because they've been friends for a long time and he's used to the old Frank. And Frank was like, listen, I went too far with my partying journey here in Thailand. And so then we bounced back over to the party with Sister Act 3 and the Russians. And Alexi's girlfriend and her friends just popped up and just going off on them. And Kate was like, ooh, I think it's time for us to go. Y'all ready to go or what? And they were like, yeah, we can leave, but let's invite the guys back to the villa. And Kate was very much so against it, but the invite happened anyway. And see, this is where you start seeing those differences in values. We already saw it at the table with the Trump conversation in one of the previous episodes. It's clear that they've grown in different directions. So now we're back at Belinda's villa and she's showing Porn Child a picture of Greg. And he was like, I've seen him here before. And at least she spoke to somebody different that wasn't Fabian because she would have ended up messing around with him. So then we finally find out what that noise was in her room. It was a trapped lizard. Thank y'all for that rewrite. I told y'all I didn't want no monkeys. I was going to have to fight somebody. So good job. Porn Chai actually guided the lizard to the outside so it can be free and do hood rat stuff with his friends again. Now he's about to leave, but then Belinda asked him to stay the night because she was afraid about what Greg could potentially do. And she said, Zion, my son, will be here tomorrow, so you ain't got to worry about that. And he was like, sure. But if we going to be real, she wanted that man to stay over regardless. And he wanted to stay over there too. He already said he was dreaming of her, so you might as well make that dream a reality. So we're back at the Ratliff Villa, and they're in bed, and Victoria's still going on about Piper. She's like, what are people going to think of us? They're going to think we're bad parents. And Tim is like, I don't think you really need to worry about that. Honestly, parents got to let that go because it's not always your fault that your child made certain decisions. Have you had influence on some of those decisions that they make? Sure. But it's still the child's decision to make. And then Victoria said something that struck a chord with Tim. She said, you can do everything right, and then one thing can come along and upend everything. I'm sure that added about 5 more pounds to his stress. So then we back at the Sister Act 3 villa, and Sister Mary Kate, even though she wanted to go to sleep so bad, she's out there still trying to be a good happy camper and be a good friend and kick it with the girls and the guys. And the guys show up. showing off body and everything. And of course, Vlad had to show up and be the first person to get naked. He kind of reminds me of this girl from SNL. So then we start seeing mashups between the parties. We got the people over at the full moon party, and then we have the party with the friends and the Russians. Jacqueline and Lori are letting loose with the Russians. Meanwhile, Kate is like, I do not approve. And then we get over to the full moon party. You could tell that Saxon hasn't had any kind of substances because this man's eyes are wide open. He looks so stimulated. And then they get over there on the beach and they're starting to look at fireworks. And while watching these fireworks, Lachlan is getting a little too handsy with Saxon. I think Saxon might end up regretting bringing his brother out, trying to push him to do all this stuff to explore, because Lachlan might be exploring a little bit too close to home. I could see Saxon's wheels turning just a little bit. So let's head back over to Bangkok with Frank and Rick. And you know, the name is kind of interesting given the conversation that's about to take place. So Frank decides to tell Rick about his journey to sobriety and spirituality in Thailand. So the conversation started off kind of chill. He said, I moved to Thailand because I had this thing for Asian women. And he was like, I was partying a lot, running through all these girls. I got out of control. Started wondering why I was doing all of this. And he was like, why do these Asian women have such a hold on me? I could just never be satisfied. And then the conversation took a turn and he was like, then I said, maybe I want to be one of the Asian girls. Now, Rick, he served as a surrogate for everybody that was watching this scene because his face and his responses were priceless. Because when he heard about the Asian girls part, he was like, you're kidding, right? And Frank was dead serious. And then he decided to do some kind of sexual inception thing because it just kept going deeper. Frank was like, I took home a ladyboy one day and it's normal, but this time I let him stick it in me. No papas. And he was like, it was kind of magical. And then he was like, he wanted to be one of the Asian girls being penetrated by him and feeling that. And Rick was trying his best to keep up. But then he put an ad in the paper from a white guy to come by and put in that work on him. And he was like, he kind of looked like me. So what I did was I beat my face, got me the cutest little outfit. I was out here serving, girl. And he said the guy came over and just railed him. And he was like, I got addicted to that. So then I would have multiple guys coming through. Some of them I even had to pay. And then he was like, I hired an Asian girl to come watch the whole thing go down. And he said, I'm looking her in the eyes, and as I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, I'm looking at her, she's looking at me. What I envision is the fact that I am her being smashed by myself. And all Rick could muster up was, touche, my brother. And then he started trying to be all philosophical and stuff, talking about, you know, am I a white guy on the outside and the inside? Or am I a white guy on the outside and an Asian girl on the inside? And Rick was like, right. I don't know. And Frank was like, I tried to sex my way to that answer. And all the things that he went through during that time made him stop having sex altogether, stop doing drugs, stop partying, got into Buddhism, which is about letting go of lust and all this constant want. Now, I'm assuming he's addicted to Buddhism now because that man has a very addictive personality. He still misses sex though, because he said being celibate ain't easy. So we back at the pool yapping, and Vlad is still oversharing. And he was like, man, my auntie hit me upside the head with a bottle. And Kate was like, you know what? I done had it. She didn't say it that way, but she's like, hey, let's go ahead and cut this, y'all. It's time for bed. We need our beauty rest. Because Vlad was over there still trying to share stuff in his therapy session. You know, he one of them kind of drinkers that tell you all their business and get all emotional. Kate was like, yay, goodbye, y'all. And she was like, good luck with your family. She was done with all of that. Meanwhile, Lori was trying to convince Valentine to probably come to her room. Hey, how you doing, little daddy? Let me whisper in your ear. Tell you something that you might like to hear. Wait till you see mine. Never mind. But he wasn't going to do it because he already had his eyes set on something else. And then we're back at Belinda's villa and she's talking to Porn Chai and they trying to discuss what bed he going to sleep in. And she gave him consent to sleep in the bed with her because she was like, are y'all into that? Because we just got into it. And I'm like, not you shading the U.S., sis. I'm not mad at Belinda for inviting him to the bed. Go ahead and get what you need, sis. Zion won't be around till tomorrow. And then Porn Chai gave her the green light with that head nod, and then he went in for the kiss. Now, I've been waiting on this for a while. I would say we've been waiting on this for a while, but I don't know y'all like that. So then we back on the boat, and Chelsea is talking to Chloe. She's like, I'm so worried about Rick, and feels so bad because she's always worrying. She was like, it's always about his feelings, his moods, his pain. And she might as well have said, Effie, we all got pain. And Chloe was like, should we all just smash? I was like, dog, Miss Mamas, you worse than Saxon. And she really is trying to get that young magician so bad. So back at the Sister Act 3 villa, Jacqueline is over here being slick. She done got to her phone, got a little sneaky link coming through. Turns out it's Valentine. She opens the door, leaves it ajar, by the way. They start making out, he drops them drawers, and Jacqueline's like, bring it on over here. Now, Jacqueline, this is a lot going on right now because you over here cheating on your husband, even though you don't know what his situation is in the States. His phone could have just been messed up. Sometimes things malfunction. He could have lost his phone. You don't know. But you decided to be impatient and go over here and get some lusty love from Valentine. With that door open, you running the risk of a monkey coming up in there on y'all. And then on top of that, you knew that Lori was trying to smash. And this is how we know y'all aren't really friends. Because what's really going to happen with the relationship when somebody sees Valentine walking out of your room? Because that's kind of inevitable here. You're going to be found out in some kind of way. So in Bangkok, we see Rick opening that bag that Frank handed him. And in that bag is a gun. I think he's already considering doing something different because he puts the gun down and immediately calls Chelsea, who's nowhere near the phone because she's over there chilling on the boat with Chloe, Lachlan, and Saxon. And they're just having a really good time. They're dancing and drinking a lot. And then all of a sudden, people are like suggesting folks kiss each other. So you got the girls to kiss. And then Lachlan and Chloe kissed. And then Chloe was like, why don't y'all kiss? And they were looking at each other like, hold up, we brothers though. And she was like, oh, just give it a little peck. And then they did the peck. But then, unprovoked, my man went in for the full kiss. Blew Saxon's mind. And when I tell you, he looked like he enjoyed it. And that is where I was like, oh no, I might have to get off this boat. Now with Saxon, I wasn't sure if he was confused, turned on, upset, or a number of things. I know for a fact that Saxon thought that was an unexpected detour of the evening. But also your brother's drunk and high, so he got all kinds of courage because the inhibitions are gone. So then we get back over to the Ratliff Villa, and Tim is writing his going away note to the family with the firearm on the table. And after he finished writing what he needed to write, he picked up that gun and was getting ready to end it all. And right as he was getting ready to pull that trigger, he heard Victoria kind of shuffling around in there. It startled him, made him pull the gun down. He hit that, and then she was like, what are you doing? He was like, oh, I'm just taking some notes of things I need to do. He ended up throwing away the note. And then Victoria was like, you haven't been acting like yourself, Tim. What's going on? Now, I wish he could have told his wife what was actually going on with him, but he was kind of cryptic with his message to her. He was like, do you understand the expectations that are on me? I haven't seen a day without expectations. And he was like, all this shit is put on me. And then he gathered himself because he was like, I apologize. I'm just really stressed right now. And Victoria was like, Tim, there's no reason to be stressed. You've already succeeded in life. And then she was like, come to bed. And he was like, in a sec. And honestly, with those words of encouragement, Victoria might have saved Tim's life. So maybe she doesn't know everything. Maybe she's oblivious. She's probably really used to him being so strong and taking care of everything. But she does seem like she's trying to build him up. And then after she left, he started praying to God to tell him what to do. And that was the end of the episode. Now, I personally think that he's going to end up over there with Piper at the monastery. He's not coming back to the States, and I don't see him taking his life. I think he's going to have a full change of heart and take that gun back to Gaeta and figure out what the next move is. As far as Saxon and Lachlan go, I'm not really sure how they're going to move after that night, because either Saxon was weirded out or he's going to find a way to satisfy his curiosity, because I think he might actually be closeted. And part of the reason why I think that is because he's constantly performing, like overperforming masculinity. Like if you are masculine, you don't have to pretend to be masculine. And there are different ways to exist in masculinity. But I think he's trying to mimic his dad to make his dad proud, but he doesn't want to let anybody down. I think he really wants to be his dad so bad. Like you think about how he talks about loving to work at that company that is his dad's company and not taking drugs like his dad doesn't take drugs. But in the last two episodes, Pop's done turned into Lorazza-Tim. And just like Tim talking about all those expectations placed on him, with his personality, I bet you he placed some of those same expectations on Saxon and the other kids. But especially Saxon because that's his firstborn. So I called this the sharing/oversharing episode because everybody almost had a story to tell, except for maybe Gaeta. But if you look at it, Belinda had to talk to Fabian about Greg. His reaction was interesting. Then you had Piper talking to Tim and Victoria at the table about her life journey. Their reactions were totally opposite of each other. You had Vlad over there telling all of his stories, making Kate feel uncomfortable. Lachlan communicated with Saxon in a body language kind of way. And he said a few words. He did say, I'm going to take you down one day. And what does that even mean? And we saw Saxon's reaction. And of course, you got the conversation between Frank and Rick. And most of us probably responded in the same way that Rick did. We still don't know how to respond. The acting in this episode was amazing. Jason Isaacs actually was my favorite actor in that episode. The way that he brought all that emotional strain and stress to the surface of Tim, oh man, hand that man an award today. And I'm not going to sleep on Parker Posey either. So what did y'all think of the episode? Feel free to comment, drop a like for that algorithm situation, and subscribe if you like. Hit that notification bell so you'll know when I drop a new video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.